Well, hello, everybody. This is Brian Liu here. And today I'm going to talk about one of my pet peeves. And that pet peeve is when people tell you things that aren't completely true about probiotics. And what that is everybody's out there saying that the stomach acid, the stomach acid, the stomach acid, the probiotics have got to survive stomach acid for them to work. Well, that's mostly true, but it's not completely true. And I want to clear that up because as a consumer of probiotics, it's really important for me to let you know how it all works. This way, when you compare probiotics and you take them and you try to see what they feel like, you have an idea what's going on, so you can tell the difference between this brand and another brand, how it works with you, okay? So it's super important that you understand the differences. So let's start off with the idea of the stomach acid and what it's for. So you all know you eat the food, it goes in your stomach, and you got stomach acid. And the whole point of stomach acid, they're supposed to be there to digest your food and break things down so you can absorb it later. But it's got another hidden role, okay, not just to break down the food. It's actually there kind of like a gatekeeper. It's there to block any bad bacteria from passing through and getting down deeper down and giving you some problems, okay? And so it's because it's the acids there, it kills the bacteria. And we all know that if you take some vinegar or something like that, you taste the acid, acid's kind of sour, right? Well, let's get a little bit, there's a little bit more than that. How stomach acid works is the following. When you eat stuff and the bacteria get down in there, acid, when you look at it chemically, is a bunch of little hydrogens dissolved in water, okay? And when you look at the bacteria is kind of like a bag. It's a bag of stuff like DNA and a whole bunch of goop on the inside, and it can replicate. And because of the replication of the goop, it makes it alive, right? Now, what happens is when you look at the bag of that bacteria, it's got like a little bunch of little holes in it, and it's also got a bunch of little things like pumps. When I made pumps is because outside the bacteria is a bunch of chemistry, and inside the bacteria is a bunch of chemistry, and they all got to be balanced out a certain way for that bacteria to live. What happens is when you get into stomach acid, in the presence of acid, the hydrogens, the little teeny pieces of hydrogen mixed with the water, technically it's called hydronium. What it does is it drifts from the outside of the cell through the membrane on the inside of the cell. Now, when too much of that hydrogen gets in there, the bacteria says, that's too much. I got to get rid of it. So what it does is it kind of pumps it out. And when I mean it pumps it out, if you go to you have a car tire or a bicycle tire, and you sit there and you pump, 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 and the air into it, if you pump long enough, your arms get real tired, right? So it takes energy to pump things. What happens in the cell with the acid is that there's so much acid that keeps going in and going in and going in, and the bacteria keeps trying to pump it out, pump it out, pump it out. Before you know it, the bacteria just runs out of energy and goes, oh my God, I'm tired. It dies. It just dies of exhaustion. So that's how one of the main mechanisms of the acid killing the bacteria. So I just want to get that straight. Now, let's talk about the probiotics functions. Let's get through the functions so you understand about the idea about they have to be live or dead and why it's not completely true that all probiotics got to get past the stomach acid. Okay, so the first way that probiotics work, one way is looking at it, is they produce helpful chemicals like vitamins, for example, or organic acids. Like, for example, butyric acid is an acid that actually gives butter the smell. So if you smell the stick of butter, that's what butyric acid is from. And that actually is formed down in your large intestines when you mix good vegetables with the right bacteria. You get that butter smell, and your cells are very happy because the butyric acid feeds everything. Okay, that's an example of a helpful chemical. That's how probiotics work. But in creating that butyric acid, it also is producing acid, which can also kill some of the bad bacteria. The other way probiotics work is that they compete for food and space. So basically, if you got a bad bacteria and a good bacteria, and the good bacteria is there to eat more food, it takes away food from the bad guy starves out, and hey, the probiotics win, bad guys loses. The other way also is it takes space. I mean, all living creatures take space to live. And so if you crowd out the bad guys with the good guys, the bad guys don't have a space and they just say, I'm out of here. So they leave and they can't multiply. Okay, so that's another way. A more direct way that probiotics work is that if you take a smells the bad guy, what it does, or can feel it, what it will do is it will produce a chemical like a hydrogen peroxide or something, and it will just shoot it out like a bullet, and it will kill the bad guy. Okay, and that's like a direct kill. Now, a more sophisticated way that other probiotics work is, in the end, some probiotics love to live with humans, and they don't like to compete with other guys. And they say, you know what? Instead of me going out and killing the bad guys directly, why don't I whisper in the ear of a human chemically and get the human to go after the bad guy? Okay? So there's a hormone signaling system or chemical signaling system between some probiotics and the human. And when the human gets the signal, it says, okay, I'm going to produce some natural defenses and go after the bad guys. All right? The other one is that the bacteria, the probiotic bacteria can protect the person by producing agents that neutralize certain toxins. Okay, it can neutralize some pretty nasty toxins. And Liovi, for example, our probiotic, it produces things that break toxins. That's one of the things that makes this probiotic super strain so good. Okay, and finally, what can also happen is the probiotic bacteria can produce things that prevent the bad guys from clinging onto your insides. It's almost like you sprayed them with oil or some kind of anti-sticking agent, so the bad guys just slide out your tailpipe. And again, Liovi does that too. These are things that professors at Purdue and Indiana University they studied. They found out Liovi, what it does, it neutralizes certain nasty bacterial toxins and prevents them from sticking. Okay, so those are the major modes of actions of how probiotics work. Now we got to get back to the topic. My pet peeve was, why is it not completely true that the probiotics got to live? Okay, so let's go through that mechanism list, and you can see why piece by piece why sometimes it's true and sometimes it's not true. Okay, we first said that it got to produce vitamins or organic acids, right? And by eating things in your gut, the food, and then producing the good stuff. In many of those cases, that could be true. But if, for example, if you fermented vegetables or food, right, before you ate it, some of those organic acids and some of those vitamins may be produced in that food with the bacteria. So it's not completely true. Because what could happen is the bacteria could be killed, the fermentation's already happened, and it's all good. Okay, you still get the benefit. Now, if you talk about competing for space or competing for food, that's when it's true. Okay, if the bacteria is dead and it gets into your intestine, or whatever, the probiotic is killed by stomach acid. It can't compete for food really, and it can't really compete for space that much because it's dead. So in that case, it's true. The next case, when we talked about the probiotic having to be there and sense or smell the bad guy and squirt it with some hydrogen peroxide to kill it, in that case, it's true. It's got to be alive. It's got to sense it. It's got to make a decision to go kill the bad guy. In that case, stomach acid killing is bad for that kind of probiotic. In the next case, we mentioned that you have to have a live probiotic to convince the person to crank up the natural defenses. That's a little bit ambiguous because there could be a piece of the bacteria that stimulate the human to create a defense mechanism. Now, let me get more into what that means. You know, if you got a friend or family member you've known for years, you've been living with them, and they walk in the house, for example, they open the door, they walk in the house. You know what? Without smelling or seeing or hearing them, just from, seeing them directly, by talking to them, you may be able to hear their footsteps, right? And with just the footsteps alone, you might be able to tell the difference between your son and your father or whatever, or best friend, or whatever, just by how they walk, right? You don't need to see the whole picture. You don't need to see their face. You don't need to see, you smell their perfume or whatever. Just the sound of their footsteps may be enough to tell you who they are. Now, that's the same with bacteria or organisms in the gut. Our natural defenses may be able to just focus on a piece of the bacteria, not the whole bacteria, but a piece, and then ramp up its defenses. In that case, if the bacteria is dead, it doesn't need to be alive for it to work. It works indirectly, and you basically can work on stimulating the natural defenses, whether it's live or dead. So stomach acid doesn't matter. In terms of neutralizing toxins, well, for example, if you are fermenting a food outside the body and the probiotics produce beneficial chemicals that neutralize toxins, and then you eat the food, and you still get the benefit of the chemicals, right? The bacteria doesn't need to be alive. And that's the case with this. And finally, if you need to prevent the bad guys from sticking, and when we ferment a food and the bacteria create the anti-stick molecules or anti-stick chemistry, and then you eat it, you get the benefit whether the bacteria are alive. And that's the case with this. Okay? I hope that's cleared up why it's my pet peeve. It's you haven't gotten the complete truth when you read all these articles and hear all these gurus talking about how it's got to survive the stomach acid. It's got to survive the stomach acid. It's not completely true. Okay, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But now you know. Okay. Now let me give you an even more specific example of how this was killing the bacteria was actually better. Okay, you can actually kill bacteria and make them better, and that was discovered by the Russians during our Cold War. As you remember, there was a time when Russia and the United States were really not good friends, after World War II. And what they did is the Russians would invest a lot of finances to help create ways of improving the lives of their soldiers so they could fight better. And what they discovered is if they selected certain types of bacteria and they smashed them up into bits, those pieces worked better than when the probiotics were ingested alive. Okay, when we talked about the pieces, in this case, the Russians figured out certain probiotic bacteria is actually better dead than alive. And that's how they would give it. They'd smash them up and put it in the powder and give a person a pill. And they found out they got great results. So that's a clear opposite of the bacteria needing to survive stomach acid. They actually intentionally kill it. Okay. So I just want to give you the full spectrum of the reality. There's no black and white with probiotics. It really depends on what we call strain to strain, or what exact type of bacteria, how it's exactly prepared to figure out how it works. And so what you got to do is you got to trust that a good manufacturer knows what they're doing, and they give you the best way of taking a probiotic or the pieces and giving it to you. Okay, so that's how you got to do basically, is work on that. Now let's go a little bit farther than that. Liovi, okay, Liovi is our product, and it's made of organic milk and Madagascar vanilla, natural cane sugar in this one, and we have lactase in there, so people who are lactose intolerant, that they're good with it. But also we have the probiotic bacteria, the B3892 strain, which is the super strain that does all the great work. Okay, now this isn't a milk product, right? There's no capsules here, and the product is alive. The probiotics are alive, and it gets down in the intestine. Now, let me tell you why. Before we had all these pills and all this fancy stuff, what happened is our mothers, or even in animals, the mothers for animals with milk pass probiotic bacteria from the mammary glands or that region into the baby down to the intestine, right? And it still has to go through the stomach acid. And that's been going on for eons. And there's no capsule there, guys. There's no delayed release, pH delayed release, or whatever. The milk would pass it through the stomach. And so what you find out is there's certain combinations of bacteria with the right design with the milk. It protects the transit of the probiotic bacteria into the intestine. It's a case by case thing. You just can't, toss it in and wish. It's all integrated, okay, by design. But we know from experience that Liovi does the job, okay? So that's the idea of using a drinkable yogurt that has a very strong probiotic bacteria that can help prevent certain nasty bacteria from sticking, and also busts up certain toxins to help you get a happy belly, okay? So I hope you now see this probiotic with a much better set of tools to understand how they work versus just simply saying, oh, yeah, the probiotic's got to survive the stomach acid, all right? So if you got that today, that's all I wanted to do, is get that to you. Now, that idea past you. Now, again, what's going on with Liovi is for the next couple of weeks, for Christmas and New Year's, back to back, those are Wednesdays. When we ship these products, we normally like to ship between Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to arrive later in the week. But because Christmas and New Year's are falling on Wednesdays, we're not able to ship the next 2 weeks, okay? It's going to ship, the first we can ship to you will be arriving on the 8th. So it's like the second week of January. So if you like, you're more than welcome to place an order right now, but we'll just have to get it to you on the second week of January. All right. And I want to say, if I don't see you again, I hope you really have a happy holidays. Thanks for paying attention, and perhaps this will be good for conversation around the dinner table if you ever run into the topic of probiotics, because it's a fascinating field and it's helping a lot of people with their health. Okay, so until I see you again, I wish you a happy holidays and a happy New Year. Okay, take care.